All right, I'm going to say some bad things about architecture and city design, town design, and you're not going to like most of them. That's all right. It's a different vision, but try and keep an open mind if you can. And imagine the things that frustrate you about life and how the infrastructure you live within contribute to those difficulties. And we'll see what we can imagine together. I have not traveled everywhere in the world, and I would like to travel more, actually, because having lived in a couple places and seen how architecture and city design is handled differently have changed how I view design. And I've got lots of books. I'm like an amateur architect. I've only built a few buildings, and those are all small. But I want to draw them up. I downloaded SketchUp, which I'll try again. I'll see if I've gotten better or it's gotten better. See if I can draw up some of my plans for individual buildings. But we'll start at the bigger picture, okay? Let's start big. So, this is where I'm going to start losing you right away. It's okay. I don't care. But you might agree. I have one book. I think it's called Entopia. Not Utopia, but Entopia. It's written by some kind of crazy, I don't know, his name sounds Greek or something. I don't know. But it's an old book. I got a whole bunch of old architectural books. And I've got the Pattern Language, which has a great book, and The Timeless Way of Building. That goes along with that book. There's one other one I forgot the name of. Anyway, towns, cities, in general, should not be bigger than about 10,000 people. That's pretty fucking big. With 10,000 people, you've got plenty of people, we'll imagine an age range from birth till death. Plenty of people to have pretty much any system you want to have. I live near a town of about 3,500 people, and it's just big enough. Not quite big enough to have everything. And then the towns should be spaced apart no more than about a half a day's travel. And that would be half a day's travel walking or on horse or stagecoach. But no combustible or battery-powered vehicles. Electrical vehicles aren't green at all. Don't delude yourself. I might want to use them as a transitional thing. But you should be able to walk there and walk back in one day. Long walk. How far away does that put them? Well, that puts them 10 to 20 kilometers apart. What is that in miles? How many miles are in 10 kilometers? Well, there's 2 point something kilometers in a mile, so like 4 miles apart. Wait a minute. No. 2.5 miles apart. Going the wrong way. So 2.5 to 5 miles apart for each one of these towns. Why? Why is that? Well, one is so that the city itself has its own identity and that people can know each other more. And they can know who's part of the community and who's just visiting. And they can have facilities for visiting and everything. It's got enough diversity so that there's people of all kinds, so you can spend time with people you enjoy. But more importantly, you have land around it that can be used for agriculture. Food forest farming, the only good kind of agriculture that there is. Anything else takes up too much work and infrastructure. Even like people write about vertical farms and stuff like this and hydroponics and all this complicated shit. Well, I'm not saying we should throw all those ideas out. If you have a wall, you might as well have a vine on it. Sure. But growing things in the dirt in a forest is what actually works. And one thing we want to do is avoid sprawl. So one problem is that 10,000 people, if everybody's got their individual home and they're just paving everything around them, you know, and you have to have centralized systems for electricity and sewage and water, then you have a bunch of dumb infrastructure and you've just built over where you should be growing food. So I actually, and this is, again, going to get real controversial. It isn't controversial, really, but we should stack people up. Meaning that we should have the architecture partly like cities have, but we should have those in denser areas. Even in a city of 10,000, you know, you should have plazas and parks within it so that nobody's far from being outside. And there should be free places to get out of the sun and the rain that are publicly maintained, which means they should be built real simple, like concrete benches, stuff that doesn't fall apart. And there's different levels of public, ultimately. So even if you went to a town, a lot of those spaces would actually be private within the public space, if that makes sense. So they would be gated off. And you would have to be invited in by a resident. So, because it used to be that when you went to a new place, people wouldn't trust you right away. Where am I going? Fuck. Shit. All right, anyway, so 4-story buildings generally, dug into slope, put people on the slopes, make sure there's no mudslides, no landslides, regardless of, you know, even if it's 100-year rain, right? Like it's a rain that's way more than it is normally in 100 years. Plan for your water flow. You know, plan for, I mean, we can start with just bare land, right? Which the land I have is pretty much bare. I've got like 12 buildings, but, you know, they're a tiny footprint, really. And I've made some dirt roads that act as swales. I guess I'll go this way. So the first thing we do is figure out our water flow, figure out where the views are at, and don't build stuff at the views unless they're buildings made for public use, you know, which could include things like restaurants and stuff like that. But lots of space where people can enjoy that view instead of having your lowest density housing in your best spots, which is what happens. I mean, you look at how cities get zoned when people move into an area and set aside land, and like in the city I come from, all the best views are just a bunch of rich houses with few people living in them. That's a terrible waste of view. So you also want to pick out spots for lakes and ponds for your wastewater or your overflow from your rain capture. All your buildings should be doing full rain capture, and you should only have composting toilets built into those buildings. They work fine. I'm not talking about expensive ones you buy made of plastic or something. I'm talking about building systems that are going to work for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and perhaps over 1,000 years. I mean, let's think long term here. And you're building into slope, because then you can have multiple main floors, and you've got the coolness of the earth, the stabilizing coolness of the earth you've dug into, combined with sucking in all the sun, and you live in between the two. So you might make parts of the building that are too hot at times, but that same part of the building will be very comfortable all night long. That's just fine. And you know, you can build it so that you can move heat from one part of the building to another, and you can make the whole thing be really dang comfortable. You know, right around 20 degrees, 21 degrees Celsius, 70 degrees Fahrenheit, 70 degrees Fahrenheit, somewhere in there is good. I gotta go. I'm getting into town. We'll keep talking about architecture in a little bit. How to bring your dog back to life. Well, there's that dog up there. See that white dog? I just brought that dog back into town. And that's funny because everybody thought it was a dead dog because they saw another dog look just like it. I have a whole other video on that. And I wasn't sure because the other dog looks so much like my dog. Wasn't sure till I got home. Hi, good boy. Yeah, you good boy. You good boy. Oh, you good boy too. Yeah. Okay, go away. Get out of here. I know it was really funny walking into town and somebody saw that dog and it's like my dog came back to life because they were certain it was dead. 2 people told me my dog was dead. And in this town, gossip travels far and fast, so there's probably a whole bunch of people that think this dog is dead. It's going to be really fun. I'm just on the edge of town right now. I'm not going all the way in. But it's going to be really fun taking that dog into town some other day, and he'll suddenly be risen from the dead. That happened to a cat of mine once. All right, architecture. So what do we got? We got towns of 10,000. It's not a hard and fast rule. There might be places where you build them bigger. You don't place them on the coastline. You don't place them next to a river that's going to overflow sometime. In other words, you avoid all these disasters by building in the right way in the right space. And you connect them all with really good roads. Big, nice, wide roads built for lasting thousands of years. And so you have a network of these. Around those, you're growing all your food. Now, you could grow it inside town, but most of it will be grown outside the town. You still want public spaces, parks and plazas, open space within the town. But, and even if we got rid of the fumes of the cars and we have, it's just towns, they're going to be, well, they don't have to be dirty and dusty. This is not the Middle Ages. This is not London in 1800. We can do better. We understand microbiology. We don't need sewage systems to treat sewer. Well, you'll never be shitting in clean water anyway. That's a terrible idea. All your human manure can go out to your parks, and you can grow some kinds of food in the city. That's true. But most of it's going to be grown outside the city and the edges surrounding it. You can have animals, but you'll put them in the right spots, like your noisy roosters and your reproduction of hens and stuff and chickens will be outside the city. And then you have hens inside the city for people to give their food waste to. It'll instantly get turned into compost and to provide eggs right away. You could also have rabbits in or out of the city. That provides you with fur, takes care of your clothing needs. I mean, we're looking at architecture in a very different way here. And I will, as a disclaimer, say I am not a trained architect. I am a fan of architecture, and I have lots of great books like How Buildings Learn, Why Buildings Don't Fall Down. I should get a whole bunch more architecture books and read them, and travel maybe more and see how things are done in other places. One thing I have learned is that you should live where you work whenever possible. Most people should not have a commute. Now, for agriculture, obviously, people would have a commute, but even, if we made it fairly fluid so that people can move from one place to another place, then if we remove barriers to that helps us in all kinds of ways. And so even the design, let's say that we have block-sized, one city block, and it's all 4-story buildings with an interior part that's like a courtyard, and all the buildings being surrounded by big porches to support outdoor living as much as possible. That should be values. I mean, we need to make a list of all the values we want to promote with this architecture, and we're going to be wrong in some ways. A lot of intentional architecture saying we're going to try and have people live this way, and therefore we're going to design for that. You have to also design for flexibility and change, which gets back to that book, How Buildings Learn. It's all about case studies of individual buildings that change their purpose. And so since we can't always predict what's going to be needed where, we can certainly try, we can build the framework of buildings so that use is fairly flexible. And if we're using natural materials, such as cob, adobe, that's mud basically, straw bale if we want more sound insulation. I don't even want to personally live in a city of 10,000 people. I think we'll talk about things at various scales, and I'm not going to say I'm sorry for seeming scattered It's just I need to combine a whole bunch of ideas together. And, right now this is kind of just riffing on it. It's seems like it's brainstorming, but it's actually decades of thinking about things. But you can keep up and, take notes if you want to, and you can tell me you disagree. Do watch the whole thing before you do that, though. Otherwise, what you say might be stupid, and then you're not a good part of the conversation. So hang in there. There are good and bad things about city life. My personal idea of a community about correctly sized for my needs would be around 150, Dunbar's number, up to around 500 people. So 500 people is 1/20th the size of 10,000. So 10,000 is actually, by my standards, a very big city. And I don't know how far those would be apart. Like you might have satellite communities outside of a city. And so it's not like all cities have to be 10,000. You could have smaller lumpings of people. You would still stack them up. And those might be people who are more involved with doing your agricultural work as well. And even your agricultural work needs supporting buildings, for example, food dehydration. Almost everything we raise, almost all the food that we raise, should be dehydrated with solar power, not photovoltaic. But with either the power of the sun or the power of the sun through evacuated tube solar hot water heaters. And I'll make a whole video and design up on that. I haven't built one yet. I built a regular solar dehydrator. It works fine. But I want room-sized solar dehydrators you can load up every day and have a fire assist. And of course, we'll have whole groves and forests that are being grown for timber so we can make furniture out of it and use wood to its highest value. We should not be building with wood. We should be building with rock. Yes, concrete. The first objection that you're going to have to what I'm saying is, my God, we're moving out to the country. We're going to live, with this relatively small group of people out in the forest. Why don't we all have our own 5-acre plots? That's kind of your homesteader dream, right? Your pioneer dream is to have your 5 acres and your cows and chickens and rabbits, and your kids are all happy running around. But that's not very efficient. It's kind of waste. It's sprawl. And we want to avoid sprawl. You have to own your own tools. It's harder to borrow them. And it's just, there's huge benefits to having more people around you. Even like I've learned this the hard way, right? Like I have objects in my life that are critical energy systems, for example, that I can't pick up because I'm old. Not that old, but I'm weaker than I was, and also I'm injured, which I guess I could care and get strong again, either that or die. So, but also I could have other people around, because some of it, even if I'm strong, you want 2 people to pick some things up. And so this idea of living off on, the hermit, and this is the way extreme is what I am. Very educational process to go through. But it's ridiculous. It's a dumb way to live. It's wasteful in some sense. Not really. Sort of. Anyway, we can't have everybody living like that. It doesn't make sense. So we want to densify people, put them in, stack them up, put them in buildings. But then what do we not like about that? What do we not like about it? And what do we like about it? Well, we love living in cities. Otherwise, most of us wouldn't do it. There's more opportunity. There's more economic opportunity, more social opportunity. It's, how we were evolved to exist is at minimum a tribe of, 50 to 150 people. But really, we might as well have more variety than that and have more people in most blobs. You could have smaller blobs still for weirdos, that want to live in tiny, tiny blobs. And those don't have to be inefficient. And you would look at every single attribute of the costs of being more alone. But we know the benefits of being in the city, and they're great. But what are the downsides? And anybody who thinks about, this pioneering idea is going to be like, no, that's not what I want. I want my 5 acres. I'm going to be stuck with all these motherfucking noisy people bothering me. Well, we can fix that in a couple ways. One of them is very dangerous to think about, and that is fixing it culturally. Defining cultural elements and ways of being, social contracts we have with people that make us less annoying to each other. You know, like getting rid of crime, getting rid of oppression and abuse. That's a little optimistic. We can try that, and we can even try and create the structure to not allow for crime and abuse. Like even though we think everybody will be all nice and stuff, build for security. Absolutely build for security. So that people can control their spaces, so you don't have a theft problem. We want to starve the thieves. Noise. As a culture, we can say we don't want noise. Well, getting rid of cars would go a long way with that. I mean, you don't want to live on like a strip mall. You know, that's very low density. Your commercial activity should be built into the building so that you're not traveling from one place to another with a bunch of products, but the products come to you. And you should also have a lifestyle and a culture where you are all with a social agreement that you're not going to try and buy every goddamn thing in the world from far away. You do not need that much. And food should be made of food. I just watched a video today about one of the places in the world that drinks more Coca-Cola than anywhere else. And diabetes is absolutely epidemic. I don't think that you should have any Coca-Cola. And it's not just Coca-Cola. Any kind of soft drinks, any kind of sugary bullshit drinks. If we want sugary drinks, it should be orange juice and stuff like that. Now, I did mention slope before. Usually when people imagine a city, they imagine it on a flat spot. And there are flat spots. There's places where there is no slope. I would say we could create slope then. We still have fossil fuels. We still have energy. And I'm not opposed to using the fossil fuels we have now to build fully sustainable buildings that will last for a very, very long time. Ownership is another big issue of who owns a home, right? Well, there is the condo model, and I like that model. You own the home, but you don't own the land under it. And you're in an association of people that are all looking out for the building. The building is built super tough. It should be overbuilt. It should be built to withstand any earthquake, any weather. Even if you no longer had windows, you know, it wouldn't leak. Like, I don't even trust skylights. I can imagine openings in the building, and I mentioned that interior courtyard in your block-sized building. The other thing is that building is not closely next to or connected to another one. It could be in some cases. But one of the problems is that in the city, when you look at density and skyscrapers, I'm very against skyscrapers. Total waste. You're looking across into somebody else's window, which I guess is okay if you're kinky or something. But I just don't like the idea of people looking at me if I don't have control over that. I want to be looking out into nature. And so individual living spaces should be smaller on average than they are in the United States, for example. You look at the square footage per person. How much square footage do you need? Do you really need a huge kitchen that usually you're not cooking in? Totally stupid. You'd be fine with a kitchenette. And there should be right near you, like we don't even need long delivery systems of food, but you know, you should be able to walk a few doors down and somebody's selling some food. And all your groceries should be there available. And really, if you had a correctly done system, you should never even have to cook for yourself. It's not super profitable. Now, if you enjoy it, great. A kitchenette is still good enough that you can cook for yourself. And some people will want more square footage, but they should be paying for that then. It should cost. And because some people want to host and they want, and it's a great thing. I've hosted many parties. Some people might even want to have a place where they know that's what they want. And so there's certain private spaces that are more set up for hosting a bunch of people. Great, do it. You know, I'm not trying to moralize with my thoughts on architecture. I'm trying to give opportunities and options. Because a lot of people just need a tiny apartment space. Like the studio apartment concept is a great idea for probably the majority of people. In Japan and Asia, they have capsule hotels. That's an extreme case, like airport ones where you're just going to sleep. I like the ones better. There's actually video game places. And I'm not saying this is the ideal, but there's parts of it I really like. And I'll take ideas from everywhere and mix them together. But, where you just have a spot to be on your computer that is secure, that is climate controlled. You've got a place to, use as a bathroom, either nearby, or you could have pee spots in your room, and you could have a shared poo spot, because you poo a lot less than you pee, right? And generally people poo even more because they eat too much food, and then they're obese and they get diabetes. So, and you could get good airflow in those. You'd want really good airflow in these really tiny apartments that are little more than a bed or an easy chair and a desk or something. And then maybe you do or maybe you don't have a window. But we can have a really wide range of classes of comfort and space and view and things like that. But again, like view, not everybody needs a view all the time. And some people should have the morning sun flowing into their room, and other people get up at 3 in the morning anyway. And if your building is designed correctly, there's tons of public space. So you can go out, and even outside of the building, the more dense buildings, there should be outbuildings where you could get together with a picnic for friends, or you can have meditation spots. You can have specialized spaces of all kinds. And of course, we need places for noisy workshops. Noise is a big issue with me. And so handling noise is very important. Like any dance club, we can have dance clubs, and they can operate 24/7. But those should be straw bale buildings or something super insulated so that nobody has to hear it unless they're in it. I don't want to contaminate the shared audio channel. In the same way, we don't want people walking around with boom boxes and stuff or broadcasting music all the time, having 3 different jukeboxes conflicting the music everywhere, having people with vehicles playing music going around. Of course, even what a vehicle is would change. I'm picturing more of a cart culture, having more horses and donkeys as transportation, and they can be pulling carts, or we can also have carts that are very lightweight with bicycle-type wheels, that we can move goods around. And there can be people with a cart that you just pay, like a taxi cart in a way. And we can have, what do you call them, rickshaws, bicycle, pedicabs, like bicycle cabs, or just human-powered too. Well, I guess bicycle is human-powered. But the bicycle part's even optional. We could have people, if we design all of our roads to have low slants, so we don't have any steep slants, and almost all roads are on contour. This gets back into, if you had a big piece of land, how would you begin designing its use? All of your transport is on contour. And you're also using those to capture water and have them act like swales, like permaculture swales, where we're channeling the water to go into the ground unless we're capturing it for rain and use. So we're getting that water going in the ground, but we're also monitoring, and we have options on changing that use, because if there was enough rain, you have to have a plan for that 100-year rain. Hi, honey. Hi there, sweetie puppy. Yeah, you're all excited. Hi there, good boy. So you have to plan for disaster ahead of time, all of it, earthquake, everything. So like those building structures shouldn't be built for a 30-year mortgage like they are now, where a building becomes garbage very soon after it's built and it's costly to maintain. No, it should cost 2 to 3 times as much to make it so it's earthquake proof, so it's hurricane proof, so that is never going to fall down. And it's more expensive. Bummer. Building in a stupid way is way, way more expensive. Building things that you have to retrofit and maintain all the time, no, very bad. All roofs, use the word all is always a red flag, always. But all roofs should be doing full rain capture, and you should have enough storage to be able to store even more water than you think you can store. And then you can capture, sorry. Jesus, dog. Don't do weird shit. Hi. Yes, you're a very nice dog. Yeah, you're a cutie baby. What a great dog. Okay, fuck off. Go away. So we're going to overbuild the buildings. We're going to make them super sound insulated because that's another type of sound that's annoying. No sound should get from one unit into another. And that means you're going to have thicker walls, or I was even looking at like aerogel insulation. I didn't really look at it. I saw an ad for it. I checked on that a few times in the last years, and I'm wondering, when is aerogel going to become cheap enough? Also, does it last long enough? You know, it's a fancy material, and I don't like fancy materials. Nothing fancy should exist. All these super eco buildings, you know, the LEED certified, energy efficient buildings, lots of them have weird materials that you can't get. That's a failure right there. You know, all your materials should come from local, if at all possible. And I'm already thinking of reasons to break that rule. Like, I'm going to have metal in the building, right? And how are we going to do doorknobs and locks? And you get away. Get away, get away, get away. Jesus. You got to make plans for dogs too. I mean, every aspect of your whole civilization, you can try and think about what are the architectural implications. Kids, for example. You can have whole kid spaces. You might have whole neighborhoods where they're not really that kid friendly, and you don't have kids running around. And other ones where it's super kid friendly and it's a kid paradise. I want to actually build a kid town, you know, where everything is even scaled down to kid sized. I want a kid sized basketball court. Pick an age at like somewhere between can handle a full size basketball court and should stretch to do that. You know, they can just finally do it. I don't know if that's like 12 or something, you know. And then where you could first get to the point where you're physically able enough to potentially play a basketball-like game. Let's imagine that's between 6 and 12. I don't have any idea. I would have to talk to people who know anything about children because I don't know shit about children. But, you know, just in terms of height and that range and stuff, you could have a tiny basketball court. And what's interesting is that they would be then working on the same skills that they'll be using later, and you could actually raise them to be great basketball players by starting them out on the tiny court. And then when they move up to the big court, they've already got years of experience. It's just a weird idea. I got a lot of weird ideas. So even whole towns, if you're talking about towns of 10,000, could have a different vibe to them. Now, I still don't want to put them on the coast because the coast is inherently unstable. And the coast should be reserved for ocean-specific industries and recreation. Something that has to do with the value of the coast. Because I've seen whole towns that just come right up to the coast and there's no natural spaces. It's not as comfortable. It should be like a big park and then have some industry mixed in. But the actual town itself should be away from the ocean because the ocean will always eat your town. And the oceans go up and down. There's whole cities that are buried now. Atlantis may have actually been a place. And there's places that have water that didn't used to because we had ice ages and there was more ice trapped and then it melted. So, I mean, really start thinking long term. Think in a tens of thousands of years time frame. Think in the hundreds of thousands of years time frame. Because after civilization collapses, it's quite possible that we'll still be hanging around and we need a place to live. Well, we can design for that kind of time scale. And we can design buildings that don't need any energy for heating or cooling. In some climates, like the one I live in, that's extremely easy. In other climates, that's difficult, but it still can be done. And we would want to look through the Köppen climate zone, that's Koppen, climate zone, Köppen climate zone, and for every single one of those, evaluate what does that mean architecturally. If we want to have this goal of building a building that needs no energy for heating or cooling, so it's all passive solar energy because the sun is our magic nuclear power. Screw nuclear power, okay? It's a bad idea. Trust me. Even if it works, even if it's safe, even if it's fusion power, we'll have waste heat product and we'll just keep building shit. Okay, that's the wrong direction to go. Population is going to be falling and hopefully slowly, so we have time to react to it, right? Like a lot of people are very concerned. Oh no, the population's falling. I'm like, great. Let's have it fall slowly. Deal with the social implications of an aging population, right? Use old people easier and make it also easier to check out when you want to. It shouldn't be a problem. I mean, the ways that we force people into that now are just messy and evil. Hi, guys. Yeah, you're sweeties. You are. Back to dogs for a second, since they're fucking here. You train your dogs really well, and they're treated well, and you sterilize most of them, and you choose who breeds. That all sounds a bit, what's the bad word? Eugenic, like eugenics. But, we're not actually against eugenics, are we? I mean, every time you decide who you're going to reproduce with, which we're fairly bad at, by the way, you decide eugenics and genetic change to the genome of the population. So you do practice eugenics at a small scale. The problem is that a lot of people, when they hear the word eugenics, they immediately think of coercion. And I'm not suggesting that. Except in the case of dogs, like this dog right here is sterilized. I had his balls cut off. And I published a video of his balls getting cut off. That sounds pretty horrible. Did you agree to that? Did you consent? No, you did not. Do you have any rights? No. But it does get a lot of free food. So, oh, you shaking? Some fucker taught this dog how to shake. It's actually moderately cute, but don't teach dogs how to shake. Anyway, limiting how many pets there are and giving them spaces that are comfortable. Somebody was writing about their chickens are too cold, right? Because they live in a cold place. Well, the entire chicken house should be heated by an evacuated tube solar hot water heater, and it should be designed also to have a perfect temperature for chickens, because chickens come from red jungle fowl in Indonesia. Chickens want to be in a very warm environment. That's why the only places that they're feral is places like Hawaii, where they're able to reproduce on their own because it's a warm enough climate. So if you're going to raise chickens, and I'm very pro-chicken raising, then provide them the appropriate space. And it shouldn't be questions on social media asking, oh, I have this problem with my chickens, they die because they get frozen and shit. It's like, no, you design a chicken coop that can handle it. I mean, you're doing that for your house, right? Of course you're not. You're relying on fossil fuels and cheap energy that aren't going to exist later. All of the architecture in anywhere really cold is wrong. If you have to use extra energy to heat your house, what happens when that energy goes away? Because it will. Just assume the electrical grid is gone. Assume it. Design your building for that. Absolutely. I think about all kinds of things. We could put a fan over here to move heat from there to there. No, the fan will break. No moving parts. Even the evacuated tube solar hot water heaters that I'm fascinated with and think are great, that I own one of and would like to get others and do experiments and make cool systems, I can't make one. So I've thought about how to use some similar principles, unfortunately without the vacuum, because maintaining a vacuum is fairly difficult. We could look into that. We could see. But, I'm thinking about decks with water in them, where it's a black deck, and the sun hits that, heats it up, and then that hot water under the deck flows into the envelope of the building, naturally up into it. That'd be a sealed system. Work on that. Also, anything sealed with water is going to break in an earthquake. So I have exceptions to all the things I'm saying. Like, I like the rubberized cisterns, the plasticky ones, but I don't want the sun to ever hit them. If the sun never hits them, I'm talking about 7,000, 10,000 liter big Tinacos, tanks. If the sun never hit those, and they were within a building, like it could be in a basement or something, structurally they're very heavy, right? You could store a lot of water in those and they wouldn't break in an earthquake. Assume there's going to be an earthquake. Now, I live in an earthquake zone. I come from an earthquake zone. I'm very comfortable with earthquakes. But there's going to be earthquakes that are far worse than you've ever seen. I mean, what happens when Los Angeles gets hit by a big earthquake? There's going to be a lot of movies about that. What is this video about? Architecture? City design? Oh, back to noise. I mentioned dance halls. That's one issue. Workspaces is another one where you want really comfortable workspaces. And we're going to want forges. Forges for making things out of metal. We've kind of forgotten that skill, but I know of people who have forges and make things out of metal. It's a really cool skill. And it's a lot better than being part of a gymnasium, you know, if you want to work out your muscles, because you get metal stuff out of it. And this is true of a lot of other systems where we can put work into getting things actually done instead of just moving some weights around pointlessly, totally pointlessly. Now, some people will talk about electricity generation using human power. We can do that as a transitional technology. But the bigger thing is to not be using any electrical power. Now, this gets really more controversial and hard to accept. But if we're really imagining grid down situations, and we're imagining these buildings built deeper into the earth, it's going to be dark in there. And so how are we going to have lighting? Well, candles work, but candles are a petroleum product that we're not going to have. We can use beeswax candles, and we should be raising a lot of bees. Bees are pretty good. We need to look at how we do hives, because there's different kind of hives, and I haven't investigated all of them. But I could even have them and experiment with them. I would love to do that, like sponsors, and have 10 different beehives in an area, and have water for the bees and all that, and have them all be happy. Happy bee, happy bee, happy bee, happy bee. I'm just getting nutser by the day, I tell you. I'm going to be babbling fool pretty soon. But it'd be fun to have, and measure each one. Like, how much time did it take? How much honey did it produce? You could interview the bees and ask them if they're happy. That might be tougher to do. But you could measure their happiness based on their death rate. You know, they have, colony death syndrome or something. I don't know. Colonies die. And there's bee mites and stuff. And it's we should be scared shitless about all that. And I'm not a beekeeper, so I don't know. But even we could have bees be built into buildings. I love it when I see the ones where the inside of the building is a glass window and you can see the bees in there, and you could have enough distance so that they don't build their honeycomb on the window and block your view, but that you can see the bees at work, and have a light you can turn on and off and not bother them too much, and have it be a darkened room. I don't know if bees are bothered by, a bunch of people spying on them or anything, but I think if you did it the right way, they wouldn't be bothered. That would be just so educational and cool. And you don't need all the hives to be like that, but you could just have some hives like that. Also, there's different kinds of bees, and domesticated bees, there's multiple kinds of domesticated bees, so we could experiment with all those and see which ones like our particular climate and which are appropriate for other climates or other types of crops and plants that are out there. But there's also wild bees, and we want to provide lots of habitat for them as well. In general, humans have reduced wildlife habitat. We would like to increase it. So we wanted the opposite of how we've done things for the last 8,000 years or so. I mean, we started off killing off all the megafauna, the big animals. It was probably us. I mean, this is circumstantial evidence, I suppose. Although maybe some paleontologists or archaeologists know more about this than I do, but I believe that there's evidence of us murdering the shit out of megafauna. So we did it. You should just sit around feeling bad for our generational guilt of what our cave people ancestors did. That's a joke. Don't feel shit bad about what your ancestors did. You are not your ancestors. You're not even your parents. I mean, should you be guilty for what your parents did? No. And no matter what culture around the world you come from, your ancestors did a whole bunch of evil shit. So don't you, as some special motherfucker who thinks you're better because of your skin color, you're supposedly indigenous, when you're not, probably, don't think you're better than anybody else, okay? Our DNA has blood all over it, but our hands don't. Our hands have the blood of what we did, meaning the taxes you pay and the oppression you support in your life now, which you're doing. Let's count that shit up and forget about your racist bullshit, sexist crap about why other people are bad and you're not. Look in the mirror, find yourself guilty, and let's get on with fixing shit. We got a lot of shit to fix and we're probably fucked anyway. But maybe some visions like I have will be helpful, especially if more of them get built. Even just building a better way of raising rabbits and chickens, which I've already done that. Not as good as I'd like to. I would say that raising rabbits as colony raised mean that we're still in architecture here. Rabbits want to live down in the ground where I live in my climate, okay? So this is dependent on your climate. There's not going to happen where there's permafrost, all right? Although I'm not sure anyone should be living there anyway. Like, there's parts of the world where if you just look at the whole world map, there's places you could say no one should be living there at all unless they're there to extract a particular kind of resource or do a very particular thing. Like in Antarctica right now, there's scientists that live there. Fine. I'm not saying that's bad, but they're not really living there. Their products are imported, their support system is external. They might as well be living on another planet. They're not really living there sustainably. Anyway, the rabbits. The rabbits, if they're colony raised, you can look up colony raising rabbits, they dig their own homes under the ground. And this could even be done in some different climates. I mean, you could even have a roofed area and dirt that they build their houses under there. The point is, no cages, no tiny little pink babies exposed to the elements. I don't even see little pink babies. They're under the ground with their mama, drinking milk out of their mama like they should be. That's natural. That's what mammals do. And the mama knows what she's doing. She's an expert rabbit mama. You aren't. And that's why people whine on these, forums, social media forums about, why did my baby rabbits die? And it's like, well, you shouldn't have even seen your baby rabbits. I don't see the baby rabbits till they're this big. And they're cute as hell. They're tiny little rabbits. And they come bouncing out of their little thing. I mean, if I had cameras up, I would have video of like them bouncing out of their thing for the very first time. That'd be so cool. I mean, this rabbit would be like going out of its little cave where it grew up for 3-4 months. I don't know how long they're in there. And it would come out, and for the very first time, it's like, whoa. And hopefully there's some nice, yummy food nearby. Some, stuff, extra waste from the kitchen, and it can wander over there and then eat its food that isn't its mother's milk for the first time. And that'd just be a great, exciting video. I don't know how we get that video. If there was cameras on all the time, we could do it. I'm not anti-technology. With all this shit I say, I'm not a Luddite. I'm not anti-technology. I'm more like Amish. And I'm not quite as limited as the Amish are. I mean, they're very smart in what they do because they make decisions about what technology they use and don't use and why. And it's not centrally controlled. It's not like they follow one way of being Amish, but each community decides, well, we're going to have a telephone. We're going to have one telephone in this one spot. I read about one community that did this. And that's because we don't want the telephone to affect our whole community in a bad way, but we think we could use a telephone. Because they'll even hire gasoline-powered trucks to come and do a work for them, do some moving of things. They're not morally against technology, and neither am I. But they think about how it affects them. And so there is this weird goal that I have, this far-out goal of the ultimate state, what we're going to be living in. But we do have transition into that. We have the technology, we have the energy right now, and we can use that energy to build the thing we actually want. And that's very confusing because it's not like one is definitely better than the other one. But it's not like the way things have been is inherently evil. It's just that it doesn't fulfill us. It doesn't give us the life that we want. Your life sucks. If you live in a city and you have people in your face all the time, I mean, I don't even like walking on a sidewalk with people walking towards me and then we have to constantly be playing a game of chicken, and just passing each other. And then there's all these fucking noisy death machines, these cars right next to us. And if anybody steps over there, they fucking get injured heavily. And then there's all these gas fumes everywhere. The air is horrible. I mean, I've been living out in the forest since 2004. And that's 20 years now. And if I go into the city, I feel dirty right away. Like if I come home at the end of my day in the city, I feel disgusting. I feel covered in, like, not just dirt, but toxic crap. And part of that's mental, because I'm used to living in the forest, but part of it's actually chemical. I mean, the air in the city is terrible. Another thought, as we think about designing cities, towns, architecture, all this shit mixes together, is to use what I call brute force brainstorming. Because it's fine to have a lot of time, which I've had, years and shit, to think about every goddamn element of everything and to try and document it. And I have lists and I write you in notebooks, most of which I never look at again. So, there's organizational work to be done. If you are, this is an aside, if you are a geek who is an information junkie and likes to be very organized, I have a task for you. And that's to take, 3 decades of notebooks and work with me on putting those into usable forms. And a lot of times I repeat myself anyway, so we just get it into usable forms and make an encyclopedic level blob of knowledge that can be useful. And we might feed that into AI so that you can actually just ask the AI a question and it spits back out at you whatever design level I got to. This would also inspire me that my work is not in vain and that it will get into the right ears and eyes to have people who are more effective than I am at building things to actually go build this shit. I mean, I want to do that too, but I'm not personally going to build shit. I'm a systems guy. I'm an idea guy. And of course, that person should be cute and entertaining and smart. But that's something I'm distracted by occasionally. Luckily, I have very nice memories of my past life. I have had more fun than most people. It's been wonderful. Hey, sweetie. You guys just love forever, don't you? Yeah, you do. Sweetie babies. I lost track. Let's back it up. So we got the notes part. I write things down in notebooks. No, I definitely have to team up with other people. I can't. I mean, I need, like, even structurally, I can be an architect, and a lot of architects actually don't know a lot about structural engineering. And I actually need structural engineers to check my stuff. Although I want to overbuild it anyway. So we could just figure out how to overbuild it better. But I don't want to hear like, oh, that's going to cost too much to do it in a hardcore way. This is why I like brutalism. Brutalism is a form of architecture which is very, concrete, big, heavy stuff. And it makes me think of like Arco Sante in Arizona. I believe the founder of that has since died, Paolo somebody. But that was a great experiment in some ways. I visited it once. And I liked the thickness of it, but it didn't seem to be designed around the things I'm talking about. Capturing the sun and all this stuff. I don't know. I'd have to study it more. But, and I know brutalism is officially considered ugly. Even its name is ugly. Brutalism. It sounds terrible. We could think of a better name for marketing, Although I think anything that actually works long term will market itself by having that civilization that uses it survive, and the other ones don't. The other people just die. So it's going to happen anyway. People are going to get really nasty when they're dying too. Oh, there's going to be so much conflict. I do not want to see that. I'll hopefully be dead before shit actually hits the fan too hard, because it's not going to be good. But that is something designed for as a transitional period between civilization as we know it now and civilization as it's going to be. Because between those, there's going to be billions of people that die. And they're not going to be happy about it. And they're going to kill the shit out of each other when it happens. I mean, they're already enslaving each other massively. Everybody's pretty much a slave. And the earth is the one that's suffering the most. And we're poisoning ourselves. We're damaging ourselves. We're slaves to ourselves. I mean, I don't even blame the people other people blame. I don't even blame the masters, because I don't think they're masters. I think they're slaves too. I think we're a slave species to cheap fossil fuels, to cheap energy. It's the nature of us. We're the same as yeast in a wort. Wort is what, W-O-R-T, believe it or not, that's what they call a sugar-rich beer mixture, if you're a beer brewer, and you put yeast in it, right? And the yeast enter into this sugar-rich, food-rich, energy-rich environment, and the population of them soars upwards, upwards, upwards. And then they poison their own environment with their piss, which is alcohol. This is alcohol piss. In fact, this is particularly not healthy because it doesn't have living yeast in it. And some beers do have living yeast and dead yeast, and that has a lot of vitamin B. Sorry, we're getting a little distracted in the analogy here. I am definitely going crazier and crazier. I mean, if you can't stay on topic or remember what you're talking about, you're nuts, man. That would be me. But I'm still useful, so keep in there. Hang in with me. Anyway, the population of the yeast goes way up. They piss so much alcohol, they contaminate their own environment, and the population drops precipitously, which means a lot. It drops off, and they, like over 90% of them die off. And then a small population that's been evolved to survive better now. You're actually evolving the yeast as this happens. Evolution in action, really. And this is how we bred yeast. We have all these kinds of yeast. They were all bred to do different things. Like, I like champagne yeast, It can handle a higher alcohol percentage, so it produces more alcohol. I've used it for making mead, which is fermented honey. Now we're getting back to bees. One of the benefits of raising bees is you get honey, which you can then turn into mead. And it's the best drink in the world. But you can also distill almost anything you want. Again, off topic. But architecturally speaking, we can build brewing, distilling, all this stuff into the system. Now, I do want to break away from that for a second, because in the space, as I talk about food forest farming, you're not going to be able to grow all of the things you want in the space you live. And so you have to also plan for trade. And that goes all the way back to food dehydration, where down here, there's nearby a place that's much hotter. And they grow stuff I can't grow here. It will not grow here. I mean, I could make little microclimates and grow a little bit of it, but down there it grows really easy. It's like just grows. And so what we want to do is have ways, as we have these little towns, to have trade systems set up. I mean, you look back at the Silk Road, right? All this shit went through India, from Europe to the East and, Asia. And that's why India is such an interesting place also, is because all this shit went through there. So we can plan for that in a kind of solar punk future. Not that I want to get too married to that word, because, I don't know, I look at a lot of the solar punk designs and they're way too complicated. I'm thinking more like, I should come up with another word. And the word punk is a little weird. It's fine, it sounds rebellious, but... and I am rebelling against civilization in the things I say, but I think more important than rebellion is the goal. It's not fighting against what you don't like. It's building the thing that's new. And I do like the word solar, because everything comes from the sun. I mean, if I had a religion, I think worshiping the sun god sounds pretty good. All life comes from the sun. No sun, no life. Should we design a new religion? Do we need one? Different topic. We can talk about the architecture of religions in a different video. Anyway, so for example, if down in these other climates nearby, we had solar dehydrators, then we could actually preserve food that was grown there and then transport it at way less cost. Because, let's say we have a mango, okay? Mango is fucking good, man. Mangoes are such good food. But they're too liquidy. And actually, there is some medicinal value supposedly in the skin. You'd have to look that up. But if you were to harvest the mangoes there and then dry them out, they become like a really nice snack. And if you were to super dry them and grind them into a powder, and so you could then transport a huge amount of mangoes, like this much mangoes would become this much mangoes. And all that flavor and nutrition and all the good stuff is all saved. And that gets transported. And same thing for meat. I mean, we can dry meat. We could maybe cook it first. I don't know. I'm not an expert at meat. You can smoke it. You can do all this kind of stuff. I mean, I'm not talking smoke it. I'm talking, meat smoking and preserving of meat. That also I'm not that into, but it depends on the climate again. And it is true that with the whole Köppen climate zone, I live in a very easy climate. So the solutions I have are largely focused on that. But I need to make a list of all the climate zones and then look at what the outliers are that I think that you could still have a town in or a city. I mean, I talked about the extreme cases, like it's just way out there, Antarctica. There's places where most people shouldn't live, but there might be a reason to. Like, I expect we'll still want to mine metals, for example. And so there could still be mining communities where they're surviving off of one product. But be careful, though, because if your whole community is based on one product, you're in danger, because that's where you get ghost towns, right? Where everything was built around one industry, that something changed that industry, and then it collapsed and the town died. But we're always going to want copper. We're always going to want iron and steel and all these things, but not the level we have it now. Most of what we can do now is recycle what we've already got. And so there is this big thing you have to think about, which is scavenging off of the existing technological world. All of that shit is very useful. A lot of energy went into creating it. That's why people steal copper. Like druggies steal copper. Because those druggies are terrible. Using drugs to, alter their frame of mind. Terrible. I'll drink to that. And I will mention also another great form of creating transportable value for trade. I know trade seems like it's pretty far away from architecture, but it really isn't. But one of the things your building should have in it, your town should have in it, is distillation, making alcohol. It's not like it's a new idea. Fruits can do it on their own. There's some kinds of birds that even get drunk and fall on the street, and people pick them up and then protect them until they sober up. I don't know if that's true. It was a little meme I saw online. But I hope it's true. It sounds funny. But there's monkeys that get drunk. There's elephants that get drunk. People like to drink alcohol. And also alcohol is useful for medical stuff and disinfecting. And so there's, we can take all this understanding of modern science and technology and use it for good. And I'm not saying alcohol is necessarily good in a society. In fact, you might want to wonder how you can reduce alcohol consumption in your culture and have it only be used for good. That's a tough one, because if you make it illegal, that's not going to work. I mean, I got people on both sides of my family tree who are bootlegging. So you can't stop bootleggers. Not going to ever happen. But you could think about the social implications and try and have that be used better for good than worse. My point is that high-proof alcohol is actually one of the best commerce things with trade, right? That My battery ran out. And the battery I just put in my camera is dead. That's bad planning. Electricity itself is a transitional technology which will be going away. Plan for it. If I continue this video, it'll have to get edited together. And I want to talk about other aspects of architecture because it's such a big topic. And really, when we talk about architecture, we're talking about social architecture as well. And I will repeat, it is dangerous to think you're going to change humans. Our DNA, our nature isn't going to change based on what you build. And so some people will say, give up. You can't build for better people. Well, you can. There is an effect of what we build. And a lot of what we have built has been built to force people into bad systems. I mean, the whole strip mall example. Like, can you think of anything worse than a strip mall? You have to have a car to get there? Pfft. You know, you like Frank Lloyd Wright, right? Frank Lloyd Wright? Just have a little more beer here. Frank Lloyd Wright. The inventor of the suburb. Suburb is a terrible idea. Even now they keep building places, and then we have the government problem of zoning such that people are unable to run a business where they live. Can you think of anything more evil than that? You can't fucking economically transact where you live? Are you shitting me? That's enough reason for a revolution right there. Get rid of any government that says you can't run an office out of your home and have people visit it. Your entire community is designed incorrectly. The entire design of things based on cars is wrong. Okay, cars were a blip in human civilization. They will not exist in the future. They'll exist for a while. But they're going to get more and more expensive to maintain. Even now, the products that are created around me, a bunch of them are for export, and the price of those has fallen because the cost of moving them has increased. And they don't ship perfectly well. They are good products to ship well. I'm not going to say the name of the product. It's an agricultural product. But it's not the right way to do things. It's based on fossil fuels. How much of your life is based on easy energy and fossil fuels? A lot of it. And a lot of people do not have fulfilling lives the way we're running society. I really want you to look in the mirror hard and wonder. I want you to stand in your bathroom looking at yourself in the mirror and tripping out. Although if you have some acid, do take it. It'll help with your creativity. I wish I had some. It's been a while though. And you shouldn't do acid anyway, because it needs a bunch of weird chemicals to make it. I would recommend instead mushrooms, because you can grow mushrooms really easily. And cacti, there's some cacti. So there's better options than that kind of stuff. And of course, if you have any, biochemical weird shit with your neurotransmitters in your brain, you shouldn't do any of that shit. Because I've known 2 people who got fucked up because they did too much drugs the wrong way. And you don't want to be them. I'm not one. I'm insane because I'm a genius. And I'm so stupid that I would say that because it makes a lot of people pissed off. But what am I supposed to not know that I'm a genius? Am I supposed to pretend to be stupid for the fucking bullies? Fuck that shit. I play with ideas for fun. And hopefully it's useful to you. So we're back in architecture for, what do I got? Nothing. I'm in the red. The battery shows red. We're just living on borrowed time. But that's true for all of civilization. It's true for me as well. God, I can't wait until I'm dead. Although my ex-girlfriend says I just need to get laid, which is probably true. She would know. Because we had a good time. It was very fun. And I am just an animal. I'm just a mammal. I want to fuck. And I've made some hard decisions that have made that not an easy thing to do, and especially not trusting anyone anymore makes it even more difficult. So, I don't know. That's one of the big problems I have, is filtering out who I want in my life and who I don't, and how we should live. And architecture in this case is the infrastructure we live in. And so, back to the thing I was saying earlier, even though we can't create a society based on architecture to a type of person that doesn't exist, we can create an architecture that accepts people as they are and then designs for what we do. So we can do things that don't allow for massive waste of resources, that do encourage conservation of resources, that are designed to have us use less energy, that are designed to have us not shit in clean water. I mean, if you're shitting in clean water, you have a serious problem. And it isn't just your problem, because it's probably illegal not to do so in the industrialized world you live in. You're not even able to get good food. The food that you eat is contaminated bullshit, in most cases. You eat poisoned food. Now you've got forever chemicals, right? Like stuff from Teflon and stuff, and it's in your body. I mean, I live in the middle of nowhere. I got it in my body. And we're seeing the health impact of this, where we're contaminating ourselves. This is an ecological crisis. It's a biological crisis. It's a health crisis. All the crap-ass food you're presented with that causes obesity, you know, I'm not going to fat shame anyone. I want to civilization shame civilization and say, yeah, you shouldn't be living in a society in which it's so easy to become obese. Because you don't want to be obese, do you? You're not actually a proponent of living an unhealthy life. You're not like an alcoholic or something, are you? Jesus Christ. I shouldn't even drink alcohol. It's poison. I'm sympathetic. I'm sympathetic with people who have weight problems, because it's a civilization problem. And it's a difficulty. I mean, there's people who live in food deserts, right? They call that urban food deserts, right? There's no good food around them. It's because they're living in this massive artificial city that can't possibly exist without fossil fuels. It's impossible for it to exist. What was the biggest city in the year 1800? Go back in time and look at that. And you can still have big cities, but even those were usually based on oppression. When the Spanish got to Tenochtitlan, which is now Mexico City, they were very impressed with the empire that the Aztecs had set up, their capital city. It was an amazing city. It was based on a bunch of assholes showing up in that area of Mexico and then oppressing all the tribes around them and sucking in resources from other places to build their fancy society up. Very impressive, but all based on blood and sacrifice and kind of evil shit. And that's why it was so easy to get rid of the Aztecs, because they just collapsed. The Spanish didn't beat them. Everybody else already hated them. So now it's kind of amusing that in Mexico, the Aztecs are used as like this example of, that's where we came from. And it's like, that is not where you came from. You know, a tiny, tiny percentage of the people in Mexico came from the Aztecs. But the Aztecs were the big assholes. And they had this great civilization because they were sucking energy off of other ones because they were violent motherfucking assholes. Those are supposedly indigenous people, by the way. No, they were invaders. They were colonizers from somewhere else. So everybody hates the colonization from Europe, which was actually not the colonization of the Spanish or the English or the French. It was mainly the colonization of the wee beasties, the diseases that people had because they lived with animals in Europe and they got the diseases, and then most of them died off because of diseases, and then they survived it, and then they had within them diseases that they had evolved to survive, and then they came to the New World, right, the Americas, and then 90% of the people died from disease. They died from wee beasties, which is one of the options for how civilization will collapse. Because now we're doing stuff like, what is it, mirror organisms, mirror something, mirror DNA? I forget. It's a recent thing I just read. But, genetic engineering has become so easy that it's pretty much a certainty. I mean, there's all sorts of versions of collapse you can imagine based on natural disasters, a solar storm, running out of fossil fuels or having to be more expensive, and then human conflict. But one of the biggest ones that is pretty much impossible to stop at this point, because you cannot stop technology, is that someone is going to engineer something, a wee beastie that kills us all. Maybe they will adjust a existing disease. Maybe COVID was actually genetically engineered. We don't know that. I know that's a controversial topic, and I got censored online for suggesting it. Even suggesting it, because after all, we're in a pandemic, right? So free speech is out the fucking window instantly. Someone's going to fucking make a wee beastie that's going to kill us all. And that's another reason to separate from most people. That's a reason to set up communities that have nobody coming in or out of them. And everything that gets near you is protected. Now, I am an extreme case of that. Not as extreme as I could be. I'm still talking to you. It's probably dumb of me anyway, but I'm going to die anyway, so whatever. But I think the idea of having communities that isolate themselves biologically from other ones has become much more extremely important. Still on the architecture topic here, you can build that into the architecture of your social system and your buildings, where your whole building, your whole town is like a castle, and you do not allow random people in. Okay? You have a barrier to entry. You could even have a quarantine. Nobody just wanders by your town, your city, depending on, whether you're 150 people or 10,000. You can't just come in with no reason. There's a reason for city gates. And I'm pro-immigration. I'm not against anybody. I'm not a racist. I'm not a culturist. Actually, I am a culturist. I'm a total culturist. In fact, I should promote that term, because I think we should all be culturist and say, no, here's my cultural limits on society of this is what I want and this is what I don't want, and make that clear so that we can work together better and trust each other better, because we're making social agreements. And one of the social agreements I would like to make with people is, and I've done this, is don't fucking get near me. Like, I keep people 2 meters away from me, and that happens rarely. A guy sat down next to me on a bench the other day, and I was still polite. I was in town, and individual cases of risk are not the problem, although they could be. Everyone is a potential disease vector. And certainly if you're fucking around, anybody who fucks you should be tested. And anybody who fucks with your society and your group should be tested. And I'm not just talking about STDs. I'm talking about their values, their impact. Nobody should get near the people you trust. And it would be amazing if there was actually towns of 10,000 people who could all trust each other. And it would be amazing if there was a way to trade with people from other places, where the trade things were on the outside of town and you did your exchanging, but you're very careful. Now, how extreme do we have to be with that? I don't know. I just know you can't put that in place after the problem's occurring. Once there is, and it's not a question of if, it's a question of when, once there is a pandemic that is more serious than COVID was, it will kill 90% of the people in the world. And the reason it will stop killing is because everybody in between got killed off, and there's isolated pockets of people who survive, or there's people who got it and survived it, which is why we have diseases that are fatal to some people and not to others. That's why nobody should go to North Sentinel Island. That's a place near South India, Ceylon, Sri Lanka, I don't know, names of places keep changing, I don't know. But it's a place where there's actually real indigenous people who have luckily avoided civilization, and I'd be so curious about them, but it's not like I'm going to drop by and visit, because I'm pretty sure nobody's welcome there. And I'm impressed. I mean, they're like the coolest people in the world. And I'm happy that, I think it's the Indian government owns that general territory. I'm happy there's restrictions on visiting them because they kill people who visit them. And they should kill people who visit them. And if you're going to design a civilization that continues, a community, a city that survives into the future, you should set some barriers for entry. And anybody who breaks those barriers, you should have an immediate violent response. Set your limits, baby, or you will be taken advantage of and you will be destroyed. I've learned that in my personal life, which is why I'm a misanthropic hermit. So I'm not saying that I'm the goal. I'm not. I'm trying to figure it out, though. Like, how can we live together and be safe and secure in a very complicated future? And how can we build for that? And before my battery dies, I guess this is me signing off on rambling about architecture, social architecture, physical architecture, the whole thing. And I guess individual architecture. You know, look at the design of yourself, how you live, and who you want to be. And how can we trust each other? How can we work together? I don't know. I'm confused by all that. And I hope you know things I don't. And I hope you do well with the people you're with. I hope you love them, care for them, even though they're flawed, even though they're not the ideal best, because none of us are. I hope that you take care of your family if you've got a family. I hope you take care of your community, that you give far more than you take. Don't look for equal. Don't just look for win-win, but look how much you can give and serve. Because life is so temporary. We're gone. And, I've chosen not to have kids, and so I give in different ways. Of course, if you have kids, please make them be good people and give them a diverse set of ideas, educate them for real, not just into the culture you're in, but for empathy for all and a broad acceptance so that we can work together even if we didn't grow up from the same place and even if we don't all believe the same stuff. That's a tough one. And I don't know. I mean, it's easier just to give up on everybody. But I hope you can somehow find a way to be good. And I'm trying to do that myself. So, adios and good luck.